All right, everyone. We are on episode 19 of the Conquer the Mind podcast with Ross Franklin, the founder of Pure Green. If you don't know who Ross Franklin is, I definitely suggest you look him up. I definitely pause the video and look him up right now. He is a top 5 entrepreneur in the fitness industry, best-selling author, the founder, success formula. I know the background's a little blurred, but I dove into it this weekend and I was just telling Ross, it really aligns very well with the theme of the podcast with Conquer the Mind. And really the idea, if you have the right mindset, you can really conquer anything in this world. And just diving into Ross's book and his career, it's very obvious that he's had a very strong mindset that was followed by massive, massive action. So I'm very excited to have Ross's time today. Ross, thank you so much for joining us on the Conquer the Mind podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, 100%. So basically just kind of a brief introduction of Ross before we kind of dive in and really dive into his background. But as I mentioned, top 5 fitness entrepreneur. He has 2 decades building high-end brands in the health and wellness industry. I'm down in Miami, Florida, where everyone here knows what the Equinox gym is, and Ross played a significant role in building that. So I'm super excited to dive into that. And he's had some tremendous mentors along the way, including Mark Wood, who is really a legend in the hospitality industry, who he reported to Michael Eisner at Disney. If you guys don't know, I'm sure that's a familiar story for a lot of you guys. So Ross really had the fitness background, and then he had the mentorship to really learn the operational aspects of the fitness industry. So really combine the best of both worlds to be able to bring the opportunity that we have today with Pure Green, which he founded back in 2014. And now it's one of the fastest growing juice bar franchises within the United States. And I actually went today to the location in South Beach. I had the chocolate mousse. First off, that name is to die for. It like that sounds like a dessert. I was expecting, like cookies, brownies, something in it, and it was super healthy. If anyone knows me, I have crazy stomach issues. I have such bad eating habits, and this really it made me feel a lot better. So whatever you guys are doing at Pure Green, I'm super excited to keep going back there and really dive into the opportunity. So Ross, once again, thank you for joining us. And I'm super excited to dive into the episode now.
Awesome. I'm glad you had that chocolate mousse smoothie. Believe it or not, there's actually half of an avocado in that smoothie. So you're getting all those healthy fats. And it does, it has all the superfoods but it tastes like
Yeah.
chocolate mousse. So that's a good one.
And I'm laughing because if anybody knows me, the idea of me eating an avocado would just make anyone laugh. So the fact that you said that, I didn't even know there was an avocado in it. I thought it was the most delicious thing ever. I could eat it for dessert after a workout for breakfast. So that's super funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, with all our products, what we try to do is we wanted to have unparalleled taste and then
Mhm.
two, be focused on high performance nutrition. So
Mhm.
yeah, interesting that you didn't even realize there's avocado in there. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so funny. You guys do a really good job with that. So it was really great to see. So before we kind of dive into Pure Green, I want to start because overall, I know you're very passionate about health, wellness, nutrition. That's really your mission, your why statement. But I understand your childhood, it didn't always kind of start with the healthy eating habits. Can you walk us through kind of your childhood? What was the health, wellness? What was kind of the people around you doing? How did you evolve into where you are today in terms of having such a strong why in health and fitness?
Yeah. All right. So you want me to go way back. So
Yeah,
way
I love going way back and really just for the viewers out there with Conquer the Mind, really, successful people like yourself. I think it's really important to note that it's very easy to look at the CEO, a founder, and say, it just happened overnight. But, it's very obvious it's no overnight success story. Everyone started off, probably just like anyone listening to this podcast on their second or third step. And as we're going to learn today, I think, you just took so many massive action steps, had mentors, and put yourself in these right steps so that, everyone's capable of greatness, I think is really the moral of what I'm saying. So I'm super excited, Ross, if you don't mind kind of diving us back into the early Ross Franklin.
Yeah, happy to. So I grew up in Westchester, New York.
Hmm.
And so the story goes, my parents tell me that when I was a baby, I refused to eat. All I ate was processed chocolate. That's all I would eat. and, I had two brothers. And so when I grew up, grew up on a diet of
Mm,
processed foods, right? We're
mm.
having Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Puffs, all the sugary cereals, cherry frozen blintzes, tons of pizza, everything that you're not supposed to eat. We would go to McDonald's all the
Yeah.
time. And so it really wasn't until high school where, I was very into athletics, captain of my high school wrestling team,
Mm,
that, that it's really there that, I started to get really into fitness.
mm,
And so, in high school, started the weightlifting club. I was,
mm,
personal training, the principal teachers. And so as that developed, going into college, got certified as a personal trainer
mm,
and started, during summers and winter breaks, just working at different gyms, being a personal trainer, and really
mm,
starting to learn a lot more about nutrition.
mm,
But after graduating college, I went right into the world of fitness
mm,
and worked for a lot of high-end gyms. And at one point owned my own gym, sold it,
mm,
and started consulting. And so from consulting, I was opening up these high-end gyms all throughout the country.
mm.
I got into yoga studios, Pilates studios, and finally juice bars. And I came to a realization. What I realized is that when you look at optimal health,
Mm,
80% of getting results has to do with nutrition.
mm.
And so it was that really became the foundation behind starting Pure Green.
Huh. That's fascinating right there. You dropped a lot of knowledge right there. And, going back to all the cereals, I remember eating Lucky Charms in the day. All those processed foods are definitely still part of my diet as well. So I'm hoping after this conversation, it's going to shift kind of my mindset in terms of the healthy eating habits as well. And I know kind of in college, in high school even, you made the transition, health, wellness. You kind of started studying it, surrounding yourself with it. And I understand in college, you actually had a business class before dropping out of college. You had like a presentation, you presented this business idea, and your marketing professor actually told you they were willing to invest in the project, but it didn't necessarily align with your why. Can you kind of speak on that? Because I think for a lot of people in college, first off, a lot of people are very lost in their life. But, if most people, myself included, if a professor told me they're willing to invest in whatever it is, I said, I'd probably go all in with that. But even though it didn't align with your why, you didn't go all in with that. So what was kind of like your mindset there and why you didn't necessarily want to go through with that project?
Yeah. So what happened there? That was actually after college. That was when I
Okay.
started to get my MBA. I went to business school, and so I was working full time. I
Hmm.
graduated from Wheaton College in Norton, Massachusetts, and so after I got into the workforce, right, and I was working for a super high end gym.
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? Let me get my MBA so I can figure out how to climb the corporate ladder, right? Because everyone
Hmm.
says you need to go to
Yeah.
business school for that. So went to business school in New York City, at Turo.
Hmm.
And the first course that I took there was a marketing course. And
Hmm.
so, I crushed the course, did
Yeah.
amazing. And, the last piece of that class was, okay, you need to write a business plan for a business.
Hmm.
And so I just created this, and this was way before the emergence of the specialty boutique gym, but
Hmm.
I created a specialty boutique gym
Okay.
that was kind of mixing in like all these different elements of, rowing and stretching and
Hmm.
nutrition.
Yeah.
And it was designed to be a small footprint, specialty boutique gym. And so at the end, the professor pulled me aside and she's like, Russ, this is amazing. Like, I
Hmm.
would actually invest in this. Like, you should do this.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely inspiring to hear, right? From a college professor in a business school.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely empowering to hear. But I realized after that, I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not really like, it was helpful to take that course in marketing,
Hmm.
but it was really just intellectualizing information. What I was realizing was that the real value is actually doing it. And so just to go through, I had to take all these required courses to get the MBA. And I was like, you know what? It just doesn't make any sense. So I just
Yeah.
left the business school and went back in and later started my own consulting company.
Hmm.
And I just realized for me, it wasn't the right fit.
Hmm. That's super interesting because it sounds like, boutique gym. It sounds like it would be kind of like right down your alley, kind of given your background, especially like fresh out of college. So that's interesting. So you kind of say no to that opportunity. You decide not to pursue your MBA. And at that time, are you like a personal trainer? Are you kind of like doing personal training classes at these high-end gyms, or what's kind of like that day in the life look like after college? I understand you were kind of like a general manager and a personal trainer trying to balance a bunch of different things.
Yeah, right out of college, I worked at the Sports Center at Chelsea Piers. It's
Okay.
one of the largest gyms in the country.
Hmm.
So I was a fitness manager there. So in charge of all the personal trainers, in charge of personal training revenue.
Hmm.
And from there, I went to TSI, Town Sports International, working as a general manager for different New York sports clubs. From there to Equinox. And then beyond that, I'm like, let me start my own company. So I started consulting. And
Hmm.
so consulted for dozens of high-end gyms after that, getting into specialty boutique gyms
Yeah.
and just really learning, from all my clients. What's interesting about consulting is that each client wants a different thing. So in
Yeah.
some cases, I was opening up new fitness locations. In some cases, the gyms weren't doing well. And so like, Ross, we need you to come in and turn things around. And so,
Yeah.
I'd go in and, make all the cuts and cut down the payroll,
Yeah.
focus on membership sales and, to do a turnaround and to get that business profitable.
Hmm. That's super interesting. I'm excited to dive into the consulting business very shortly. You mentioned kind of like at the time you're kind of a personal trainer, general manager, kind of helping these gyms. And I understand you were also at these huge gyms working with like celebrities at the gym, which I feel like for a lot of people, at a young age, working with celebrities, kind of living your dream as a personal trainer in a field that you like. And I understand you also had just saved enough money to afford to live in New York City as well. So I think for a lot of people, at that point, you would kind of settle in life, you'd be content with doing that for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I'm curious what part of you like saw like the bigger picture, the bigger vision, because I feel like fitness trainers are kind of like realtors where they're like a dime a dozen almost, but you created like the entrepreneurial aspect and the business part of it. What like saw like if that makes sense, what about you was like different to see that bigger picture?
Yeah, so I think it took me quite a while to realize that I was really, designed to be an entrepreneur. And
Mm,
so from the world of consulting, I was making a lot of other people money.
mm,
Consulting, I worked with a lot of really interesting people. I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. And, I realized, hey, wow, I'm making them, a ton of money. Why don't I do this for myself? But it
mm,
really took a while to kind of get into that mindset.
mm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's super interesting. And now once you started the consulting business, you're working with like a range of different businesses. And I know in your book you mentioned like the SOPs, which you're very big on. Are those like, is there like one foundation for like all businesses that like work for every business, or is like, the boutique business versus large gyms, like are those all like very different foundations, or how are you like tailoring programs for like all these different businesses?
Yeah, it's really funny that every business is completely different.
Mm,
But the certain principles that apply, the certain action plans, right? So in my book, I have different SOPs, different action plans that really apply to most. But one of the interesting things about consulting is that they all have different outcomes. They all want different things. And so what I learned
mm,
about consulting is every client's completely different. And my role was so different as well. I'll tell you a story. So one gym that I went into, you know, I always make the assumption that, hey, every client just wants more members, right? Because everything's
yeah.
very focused on membership sales. Gyms make most of their money, 70% from selling membership sales. But
Mm,
this one gym that I consulted for, they're like, we just want you to focus on marketing. Like that is all that we want. And
mm,
so for me, I have this mentality where, okay, like I learned from consulting, I got to focus only on what the client wants. And
mm,
so when I first started with this one client, they're like, okay, here's what I want.
mm,
I want you to find a car that we can use for a contest. And I want the car parked right in front of the gym all month long. So all the members see it, and they have the opportunity to win it. I'm like, okay, great, no problem. I'll get you the car. What's my budget to buy a car? They're like, zero. You
Oof.
have $0 to get a car, in front of this gym. And so I have the attitude, look, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So
Mhm.
drove around to different dealerships. And as you can imagine, how do you negotiate no matter how good a negotiator you are, how are you going to get a car for free? And so I went from dealership to dealership. I went to 15 dealerships. Finally, on the 15th dealership, built a relationship with one of the sales guys. And he's
Mhm.
like, you know what? There's this insurance company that you can use where they will have these crazy contests. And so we'll give you a car if you can work
Mhm.
with them. Called up the insurance company, and the contest ended up being like, you had to take a Nerf like football, like a little small football, and you had to throw it. It was something ridiculous. I can't remember exactly, like 100 yards and
Yeah.
land in like a hula hoop or something like no one can do. I tried to do it. I couldn't even get it 75% of the way. Like it was impossible, but got the car. The gym owner was blown away that I actually did that, right? It was like an
Yeah.
impossible task. Came up, gave me a big hug, and it worked. It was actually a successful promotion. But so from that, like what I learned is like, and I teach this to our teams, right? Nothing is impossible, right?
Mhm.
Like let's figure out exactly how to do it, how to get it done. Let's be very specific. And
Mhm.
so my process is, okay, what's the outcome we want? Let's create a very clear path on exactly what needs to be done in order to
Yeah.
get there, who's accountable for it, when is it due? And by following that process, we will always achieve the result.
Mhm. No, that's awesome. And the Nerf football, that's so funny. That's so like unique. And I don't know, it's just like marketing. I feel like everyone kind of goes like the same routes, whatever industry you are, there's always like a few sources where it's like, that's what everyone does for marketing. But when you think outside the box, that's where you get like these very unique ideas. So I think that's very powerful, Ross. And the fact that you didn't have a budget either, I think that's a powerful lesson as well, where sometimes you just have to take that risk, and you may not know what's on the other side, but clearly, a better version was on the other side. So that's really interesting as well. And diving into the consulting business, you're helping a bunch of failing businesses. Were there like any like themes that you were noticing of the failing businesses? Was it more like the operations? Was it more like the culture? Is there like one like thing that you have to fix like right off the bat? Do you have to like fire up most of the people and bring in new people, or is there like a step one as soon as you see like a business?
So each business is totally different, right? I remember one gym that I went into and they're like, look, we're burning $60,000 a month,
Mhm.
fix it.
Oh,
And so I'm like,
wow.
okay, show me your P&L. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why is payroll so high? Like, let's dive into this. Give me the details on what everyone's getting paid.
Mhm.
Realized that with this gym, they have an aquatics instructor who's getting $70,000 a year. I'm like, what? Like, you're gone. Like, this is
Yeah.
who to cut, right? So it's just by going through that and just so some cases just foundational operational principles that
Mhm.
it's mismanagement in terms of operations.
Mhm.
And then in some cases different clients, it's membership sales. Like they have no training protocol, they have no scripts, so it's putting mystery shoppers in place, finding out exactly what these consultants are saying to people, and just fixing the sales process. So each situation is totally different.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I'm sure you're learning so many different experiences in all these different businesses. And how does that eventually evolve into Pure Green as you have the consulting business for I think 8 years, and then you eventually launch Pure Green. You're noticing all these different things. You're working with boutiques, juice bars, large gyms. You're learning all these different things, and then it evolves into Pure Green. What are like the things you're noticing that made you decide, Pure Green's the venture that you want to get into?
So yeah, once I came to that realization that when you look at optimal health, 80% is nutrition. I've
Mm.
always been interested in nutrition, anti-aging, going to different seminars. You're
Yeah.
always super focused on health. But once I realized that nutrition accounts for the biggest part of optimal health, I realized I need to do something that's focused on nutrition. I
Mm.
realized from consulting for juice bars, I love the model. It's so
Yeah.
much more scalable than like a
Mm.
50,000 square foot health club that's very complex. And
Mm.
your typical entrepreneur who doesn't have entrepreneurial experience, like there's no way you could just put them in a big box gym and expect them to run it. So I look
Mm.
at the big box gym as not a scalable business.
Mm.
So in really my mission, what's driving me is to build healthier communities around the globe. So in order to do that, I realized I need a scalable business. And that's what I love about the franchise business.
Mm,
And the juice bar business specifically is, and the way we do it is very scalable, where we could take someone who just has a passion for health and wellness and
mm,
teach them the system, everything that they need to know, and make sure that they're very successful.
mm. Yeah, no, that really is the power of franchising where you bring in, it really is like a growth operation using the right people, using the right culture so that everyone is tied into the same mission. And it gives, people that want to be an entrepreneur, but want to hedge their risk to a certain extent, or maybe they're maybe later in their career, they have a family, they have a bunch of obligations that they have to deal with. And, it's not realistic to invest all this money and start this new business idea. And not to mention, not everyone has like this Elon Musk, this, Ross Franklin type idea with Pure Green. So I think that's also noteworthy as well. So you founded Pure Green back in 2014. And can you kind of walk us through some of the evolution? Because I understand you also have a very lucrative wholesale business as well on top of the franchise business. So can you kind of walk us through what that process looked like?
Absolutely. So Pure Green started with just a brick and mortar store in New York City, where we
Mm,
developed a very loyal following.
mm,
And at the time I started it, with our cold pressed juice, we were making it 3 times a week. It was only good for 3 days.
mm.
The core product of our business has always been the superfood smoothies and the acai bowls as well.
Okay.
But with the juice, the way we were doing it at first, a lot of labor was through the roof. There was a lot of wastage
Mm,
when you don't HPP the juice. Once I realized the HPP technology, which involves using water pressure
mm,
to lock in nutrition, and it gives the juice an extended shelf life. Once I realized that, that opened up the floodgates for us for
mm.
wholesale, which I started that division in 2016, and
Okay.
started with a lot of gyms because that's my background. I know all the gym owners. So once I realized I have a product that I can wholesale, went to all the gyms and got the cold pressed juice in all the gyms. And that's really how the wholesale division started.
Mm. That's super interesting. You mentioned a lot of good points there that I kind of want to dive into as well. With the HPP processing, can you kind of dive into viewers that don't really understand what that is and what's the difference between someone using HPP processing and not using HPP processing?
So HPP stands for high pressure processing. And we do a process to the juice called the cold press process, which
Mm,
involves using hydraulic presses that first we chop up all the fresh fruits and vegetables, then we use hydraulic presses to press it,
mm,
and no oxygen gets in. And so that's really important. But after we cold press it, it goes into these massive machines, these HPP machines that are huge. They cost like $5 million each.
yeah.
And what it does is applies 5 times the pressure of the bottom of the ocean, 87,000 pounds of pressure per square inch, and it's equalized pressure to the bottle after it's already been pressed. And what
Huh.
that does is it kills all the harmful microorganisms in the juice. It locks in the nutrition. So you could drink it on a bottle of cold pressed juice on day 30, on day 40, and
Mm.
still get the same nutrition as when it was first pressed on day 1. So that's the benefit of HPP, locking in that nutrition and giving it that extended shelf life.
Huh, that's super interesting. So, like a lot of times you have like a smoothie, or maybe you get like an acai bowl, or maybe you get like 2 for 1 or something, and you leave it in the fridge overnight. So would it not be as good the next day, or what does that look like in terms of juice, acai bowls? Is it as good the next day, or do you need it like lightly handmade in the moment?
So with cold pressed juice, what happens is if you cold press juice and you don't HPP it,
Huh.
each day that goes by, the nutrition degrades. So
Mm,
what that means is if you're drinking a bottle of cold pressed juice that's not HPP'd, if you're drinking it on day 3, it's going to have a lot less nutrition compared to when it was first pressed day 1.
mm,
Okay. So that's where
yeah.
if you HPP it right after it's pressed, it locks in that nutrition.
Mm,
With a smoothie, it's different, right? Our smoothies and acai bowls are handcrafted and made to order using the highest quality ingredients. With those, like you do want to consume them, ideally within a couple of hours from when they're first made, for the same reason. Over time, oxygen is getting in and it is degrading.
okay.
So you do want to consume the smoothies and acai bowls within a couple hours after it's made.
Okay. That's super helpful, Ross. I appreciate that. That's good to know going forward. And you mentioned you started in 2014, very lucrative in New York City, probably a tough market with a lot of competitors. What kind of eventually gave you the confidence to start franchising the model? And you started wholesaling, I believe, in 2016, and you started franchising in 2020. So what gave you the confidence from wholesaling to say, I want to start franchising this?
Yeah. So what happened is the wholesale business was like a beast. And when I started,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. Made a lot of mistakes, right? Bought a ton of trucks, tried to be our own distributor. And for our first 500 accounts, we were self-distributing it and we were losing our shirts. I mean, it was crazy. I realized later that the wholesale business is a distribution game. And so partnered up with different distributors and let them do what they do best and distribute the product. And that increased sales tremendously.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening moving into 2020, right? So in 2019, I realized that the way to really scale our retail business is through franchising. There's no better way. Like our model is set up for franchising because we had at that point national distribution. We can move the juice anywhere in the country. And I
Yeah.
realized that with the franchise business, we can get the cold pressed juice and shots to any franchisee all over the country. So it's a big disruptive innovation because no one else was doing it that way at the time.
Mhm.
So I started franchising it in 2020. And also at that time, what I did was I knew that I needed my full focus just on the franchise business, on
Mhm.
finding and attracting the best and the brightest franchisees to come in. And so I brought on my mentor, his name's Isaac Cohen, to be the CEO of our wholesale division because his background's in manufacturing. He owns 10 companies. The guy's absolutely
Okay.
brilliant. So brought him in to run the wholesale division.
Mhm.
And that freed me up to focus 100% of my time on franchising Pure Grain.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to today, we have, 100 plus locations that are either open or in development.
No, that's incredible. And I love how you brought in someone that was like also kind of a mentor for you to run the wholesale business. And, I think a lot of people are, they'd want to kind of do everything, everyone wants to be the best at everything. So I love how you kind of figured out what you wanted to focus in on. How did you even find out about the world of franchising? I know the jokes that everyone kind of falls into franchising. Was the idea like introduced to you by like a mentor, or where did you come across the idea?
Yeah. So with franchising, whenever I get focused on something, it's something I'm new to, right? I always want to find someone who knows a lot more about that subject than I do. So I interviewed dozens of people in the franchise space. One of them was someone who owns over 1,000 units of another franchise. And so he gave me like the insights to help set up Pure Grain as a franchise the absolute right way. And
Huh.
so at different points in my life and in my career, I've been very fortunate to have these different mentors that have come into my life at just the right time.
That's super. I love all of that. The idea of mentorship is just a huge theme on the podcast with everyone that's successful. And I love how you're proactively going out and seeking the mentors and not kind of just waiting for things to happen. And you figure out what you're passionate about and you literally go all in with that. And I also understand you literally wrote the book in a weekend as well, which, when you set your mind to something, you can get it done. So I love your mindset with all of this. And in terms of Pure Green, you mentioned kind of the acai, the cold juice bar or juice shots.
Mhm.
Where is like most of the revenue derived today? And how does like the wholesale business tie in? And I know there's also like an online business as well. What is like the typical franchise do in terms of where the majority of their sales are coming from?
Yeah. So, when you look at our FTD, the franchise world is very heavily regulated. So I have to be careful, how I say certain things. Believe it or not, even if I give you the exact percentages of each category in the franchise world, you're not allowed to give the specific figures. But what I'll tell you is that, in our FTD for
Yeah.
2022, average unit volume, our average revenue per store was 743,000. Okay.
Mhm.
The bulk of the revenue is coming from the superfood smoothie category. That's number one.
Yeah.
Secondary to that is the acai and pataya bowl category, a good chunk. And
Mhm.
then a much smaller percentage is the cold pressed juice and shots. Cold pressed juice and shots, it's important to our business. It's kept, in an open air merchandiser in our stores. And
Mhm.
so we do a lot with that, but the driving force, the bulk of the revenue is coming from the superfood smoothie category and the acai bowl category.
Okay. That's super helpful for people kind of thinking about all, because there's a lot of different things that you guys offer. I was in the store today and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know it was like more than smoothies. It has literally so many different things. So that was really attractive to me. And I understand, you're very big on kind of using local organic farms and really with superfoods using the best ingredients. Can you talk to us a little bit? I know you mentioned national relationships. What does like the supply chain look like? Are you using like ingredients from the United States, outside the country? I know acai is mostly in Brazil, I think it is.
Mhm.
So what does that like look like in terms of the supply chain and where you're getting your ingredients?
So the ingredients of our products are very carefully curated. We need to know exactly where all the products are coming from. And there's certain brands and very specific ingredients that our franchisees have to use.
Hmm.
And our franchisees are purchasing from local distributors because we're very big on supporting the local communities.
Hmm.
The superfoods that we use have to be the highest quality, right? So, for example, the whey protein, it comes from pasture raised cows, grass fed cows,
Hmm.
100% whey protein concentrate. The all the superfoods are all certified organic. The acai is organic.
Yeah.
We don't make we prefer quality and knowing where the ingredients come from. Everything's non-GMO,
Hmm.
um, compared to being 100% organic. We do work with some local farms that have organic practices, but don't have that organic certification.
Okay. That's super helpful. I love kind of the practices that you guys are bringing in. I understand you guys also weren't getting ingredients from China as well,
That's
due
right.
to kind of like the supply chain and some of the moral obligations over there. So I think that's really powerful. And I love how you're very stuck on your mission, your why statement, and you really won't compromise that for anything else. So I think that's just really powerful when you are evaluating franchise opportunities. The founder, the CEO, what's their mission, what's their tie to the franchise. And, it's very clear that you're a very hands-on, very why-oriented person, which I love to see because so many people are lost out there without their why statement. So it's very powerful what you're bringing over at Pure Green. And I understand, you started in 2014, wholesale in 2016, franchise in 2020. Now we're in 2024, really 10 years later, and you guys work with over 50 sports teams, I believe, SpaceX, like the biggest companies out there. And when you talk about fitness, nutrition, wellness, the celebrities, the athletes, those are the people that are getting like this insane treatment that most people aren't able to get. But you were able to get those contracts and bring it to really everyone else. Could you walk us through like how were you able to work with sports teams? What was kind of like that process like?
Yeah. So one, I have to give credit to the product itself, right? Because
Yeah.
we really went out to formulate products that, from a nutritional standpoint, have the highest quality ingredients, the highest nutrition. And
Mm,
so originally, the way we got into the world of professional sports is we started with one team. They became the best client at the time. And
mm,
then what happened is, the word spread throughout the athletic community. All the dietitians and all the teams became very
yeah.
curious. We eventually created a nutritional advisory board with four top tier dietitians. Three of them are from professional sports teams, one of them from the US military. And they make sure that any claim that we make is backed by science,
Mm,
right? Everything has to be backed by peer reviewed scientific references.
mm,
All the products, have to meet very stringent standards,
yeah.
um, and they're involved in all new product formulation.
Hmm. That's super interesting. And I'm sure there must be so much like research, due diligence that goes into it. And when I think about the health and wellness industry, it's something that's literally like changing by the day. What does like the research team look like for Pure Green? Do you guys like have like a warehouse somewhere where you're like testing new ingredients, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people involved, so it's a
Yeah.
combination. All new ingredients need to be vetted by our nutritional advisory board. Getting into the product formulations, we have an former executive chef on our team who's
Mm,
involved. We have our nutritional advisory board who's involved from an
Yeah.
efficacy standpoint. This also just from a marketing perspective, we only want to use superfood ingredients that are proven, that the mainstream population knows exactly what they are, that is familiar with them. There's a lot of things we would love to incorporate in products. Like some of them are adaptogens, right? So chaga, reishi, items like that. But the problem is the mainstream population has no clue what they are. And we don't want to be the
Yeah.
ones who are educating them on that, because that's a very expensive proposition. So
Yeah.
we use ingredients that generally people are aware of and know about the benefits,
Yeah.
and that we find that to be very helpful.
Huh, that's super interesting. And yeah, I'm just thinking about all like the research, the materials that go into this. And it's one of the things where a lot of times people, when they think about a franchise opportunity or do I want to do it myself? And it's just very obvious for people that are in franchising kind of what the differences are, but just the national relationships, the ongoing research, and you can have a good business idea, you can bring it to market, but where are the customers? And then even if you perfect everything, the sustainability of it, I think is just such a big element where you have the resources, the national relationships, and you're constantly bringing new adaptions to the market as well. And, it's just changed over the last 10 years so much, and it continues to change as well. So, before we dive into like the real estate a little bit and kind of what the outlook of like an actual Pure Green location looks like, I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job on the Conquer the Mind podcast without asking you, because I would love to know your mindset when you want, before you had any sports teams working with Pure Green, whatever sports team it was, we don't have to give names, but that first initial meeting with that sports team. I know in your book you're big on like the 93-7 rule and all these kind of like mindset tricks. What was like your mindset going into that initial call? You must have been, I would be super nervous, but what was like your mindset going into that first call with that first sports team?
Yeah, so the first call was actually done by our now VP of business development. And so my first interaction with the first sport team was in person.
Okay.
So I went to the stadium. It was a New York team, and met all the coaching staff, all the coaches, had them try all the products, and getting grilled by the dietitians about
Yeah.
all the nutritional content and making sure that everything held up.
Yeah.
Um, so that was my first experience in professional sports. But luckily, everything goes back to the products.
Mm.
Everyone loved it. We had
Yeah.
players that were coming over like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
We need this. And so, the product really does speak for itself, and really is our key to success.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, when you have a great product, the rest will definitely come. So I think that's very powerful where, it's almost like, I don't know, you're just bringing it to market. I think it's just so interesting that, it's something that athletes have, celebrities have. I think SpaceX is really powerful, and, it's something that the mainstream is able to get through Pure Green. And, the idea of superfoods is kind of like this buzzword almost, but, I had one today and, I feel a lot better already. So I can say it works magic, and I'll definitely be going back. So I would know I will mention I want to talk about the actual locations of a Pure Green and kind of what the setup looks like. I understand, it's about a 600 square foot space. And one of the things you kind of talk about with emerging brands is you notice kind of the big theme on the experiential factor and creating an experience for the customers. Can you kind of walk us through what the store looks like and what the thought process was in terms of building that real estate?
Sure. So in terms of the store experience, so it's certainly evolved over time. Our
Hmm.
stores look completely different now than when we first opened the first one in 2014. And
Hmm.
so we've definitely evolved along the way. And so our current look and feel of the store, I'm a big fan of Apple. And
Yeah.
so I would say that if Apple had a juice bar, it would be Pure Green, because the materials that we use, they're all sustainable. We use this beautiful Baltic birch wood.
Hmm.
The store that you went to in South Beach, I mean, at the Good Time Hotel, it has more of an Art Deco theme
Yeah.
to kind of blend in with the hotel. But we're very focused on the in-store experience. But more so than that, what we focus on is hospitality, just creating a warm, friendly, and an engaging guest experience. we're really big on, even with third-party deliveries, some people's first experience may be on Uber Eats or DoorDash. And so what we
Mm.
do is we have our team members write handwritten cards, thanking them for their order. Can you imagine, like, you order from Uber Eats and your order gets there? What's this card? And you look at the card and it's like a handwritten card personalized to you. I mean, it blows people away. They post it on social media, and it just
Yeah,
speaks to, our core focus of just creating, warm and friendly engagements with our guests. We don't look to
yeah.
them as customers, the people that come through the doors. We call them guests. And the
Mm.
goal is to treat them like you treat a guest in your own home.
Mm. That's super interesting. I don't know if you're able to speak on this at all, but the people that are going into the store, how can you speak on like how often they're going back to the store or kind of what that looks like and like the repeat customers?
Yeah, I mean, we have people that come in twice a day, a
Oh,
lot of times
wow.
every day. And people, once they try the products, our mission really is to build healthier communities around the globe. And
Yeah.
so we embrace just everyone in the community coming in. And our goal is to not only, we know that the product speaks for itself, but our goal is to leave a legendary experience, which helps to keep them coming back.
Yeah.
Our team members get to know people's names, they build relationships with them, they become friends with them, and
Mm.
that's a whole part of the experience.
No, that's awesome. And I know when I was at the location today, I want to ask you a little bit about picking the real estate selection, how you actually find the location. When I was at the one in South Beach, it's literally like right underneath the Equinox gym, which hundreds, if not thousands of people go to like by the hour. There was like a yoga club, a health club. You mentioned the hotel there too. Like really, really great location where there's just a lot of traffic. Can you talk to us about what goes into actually finding the best real estate selection for a potential franchisee?
So with our site selection process, what we look for, location size can range from a smaller location where the rent's very expensive, 500 square feet, and could range as high as 1,500 square feet. Our sweet
Mm,
spot really is about 1,000 square feet. But
okay.
what we look for areas with very high volume, very high foot traffic. And it could be a center that we pay very close attention to the tenant anchor mix. So it could be a center that has a high-end supermarket like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. It
Mm,
could be specialty boutique fitness like an Orange Theory or a Pure Bar. It
yeah.
could be high-end coffee shops. There's certain brands that we know if they're there, like we want to be there.
Yeah.
In more rural areas, we look for centers where the parking lot is always full, especially in the morning and lunchtime. Those are important times of the day for us. And
Mm,
so we look at all those factors. We look at the demographics, the psychographics. We even use AI to do predictive revenue forecasting
mm,
that is really helpful based on our most successful locations around the country,
mm,
because location is one of the most important factors to the success of that franchise partner.
mm. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I love how you're incorporating AI and just this idea of franchising versus trying to do it yourself. And, when you're evaluating franchise opportunities, how are they changing over the years? And you guys are constantly innovating, adapting, and it's very clear, and I love how you're not very set and locked on 600 square feet or, 1,600 square feet. It's really based upon the market and trying to set up franchise owners for the greatest chance of success. So, I love to hear everything that you guys are doing there. And with that being said, kind of diving into the ideal candidate, you have a very strong mission, a very strong why statement. What are you looking for when you're identifying those proper franchise owners?
The first thing we look for is their alignment with our mission. We
Mm,
look for franchise partners that have a sincere and genuine passion for health and wellness. That's
mm,
the first thing that we look for. And that's the most important thing. We
mm,
don't we don't necessarily look for people that have been in F&B operations before, that have the experience, because we teach them everything. Our model is extremely streamlined. So really that passion for health and wellness is the most important thing.
okay. That's super helpful. And I would think, if you are interested in health and wellness, I'd be curious a little bit as, a newer emerging brand, what was it like with your first 10 franchise owners compared to where you are now? Have you kind of like changed that ideal candidate a little bit, or how stressful was it trying to find the first 10 as opposed to where you are now and you can have that validation in the system?
I think that not much has changed. What I will say is that I think any new franchisor, someone new to franchising, I think is really excited and overly eager just to get franchisees in the system. And I
Mm.
think, after the initial 10, we've just increased our standards in how we award franchises. We're very focused on, do they truly align with our mission? And that's always been the case.
Yeah.
But we really want to make sure we found that the first 90 days of operation are very critical. So we want to make sure that the franchise partner is there daily for the first 90 days, really to building the culture of that store, really
Yeah.
building relationships in the community. And we find that those operators that do that, like, are massively successful. It just
Mm.
fast tracks everything for them.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And, we talk about marketing, and really the greatest marketing is the franchisees, because those are the brand ambassadors of the franchise, of the system. And, whether, it's McDonald's, Subway, a lot of times you think big corporation, but it's oftentimes small business owners that are in the community. So that oftentimes is the best form of marketing. And you mentioned the first 90 days is really powerful for the owner to ramp up the business. Can you talk to us about like the different participation types, and what is that ideal day in life between that first 90 days compared to, year two down the line?
Yeah. So first 90 days, I mean, it really starts prior to that. It really starts where 1 week prior to the grand opening, our team is there on site, training
Okay.
the entire team for that franchisee and guiding them through the whole process to get to grand opening.
Mm.
And which involves, we have 2 events right before grand opening. So it's a friends and family event where they invite all their friends and family. And that's really helpful to work out all the kinks with the new team members. Then we have, and we also have encouraged friends and family to leave reviews, because getting reviews, the initial reviews, are really important for the algorithm on Google and to that digital search presence. And then
Yeah.
we have a influencer event where we invite 20 influencers to come in to get the buzz going on social media. That's a really important factor.
Yeah.
And then the grand opening day itself, just we want to have the line out the door all day long, and then thereafter not have that stop. So a lot of things to generate excitement. A lot of times where we have local DJs come in and perform, and really just getting the buzz going, inviting all the local business owners in the community
Yeah.
to come in and support the grand opening to help get the word out. So, and then thereafter, it's just presence in the store, really connecting and building relationships with the team members, really drilling down on the team members to make sure they're able to articulate all the nutritional benefits of all of our products, really making sure the team members are engaging guests. And we have certain standards that I'm sure you read about in the book, the 5 and the 10-foot rule, that all of our team members are engaged in. So smiling, looking at guests in the eye, welcoming them to the store. It's all important elements of our culture.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And I wanted to actually bring up that 10 to 5 rule, because I think that's really interesting. And also the lightning strike idea I thought was really interesting, where, when I think about corporate America and, working for someone else, it's typically like you feel like you're walking on eggshells, where it's like someone's just trying to catch you doing something wrong so that they can let you go for the other person that can probably do the same job as well. But, I love you really have like a top-down approach to leadership where, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jocko Willing.
Sure.
Yeah, so he wrote the book Extreme Leadership, which very much aligns with what you talk about, where no organization can really be successful if the guy at the top doesn't take leadership for anything. And even if it's something where you're really not even associated with, if it's your business, you take ownership for it. And, it's very clear that Ross has that extreme ownership. And kind of my question, can you kind of talk about that 10-5 rule and the lightning strike? And why is that lightning strike rule so powerful? Whereas rather than trying to find ways to yell at someone, you're trying to lift someone up, and the impact that makes on like the employees and the culture. And what does that look like?
Yeah. So first I'll say that, from what you were saying, like, everything really does reflect who's in charge. We
Mm.
really do believe in that top-down leadership approach. And
Mm.
so for us, it starts with the franchise partner. And so we're doing a lot of things on the national level, focusing on the franchise partner for them to be amazing leaders for their store. So for
Yeah.
example, a couple months ago, we always have these contests that we do every single month. But getting into hospitality, there's a book called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And
Mm.
Will Guidara took his store, 11 Madison Park, to the #1 restaurant in the world.
Mm.
And he did that not just by having a Michelin star chef, but he did it by creating these legendary experiences, having the servers listen in to what the patrons are saying, and then creating this magical experience. So we had this contest one month where we're like, all right, guys, like what does unreasonable hospitality look like at Pure Green? And
Yeah.
so we had all these magical stories. I mean, just the craziest things. Like, you imagine, we had so many amazing stories that we had to award 2 winners for this contest. And so we're focused on unreasonable hospitality at the highest level, and that stems down the line. Now,
Mm.
getting into on a team member level. So as you were talking about, we have this. A lot of organizations do this, but how many do it well? And
Mm.
so the 5 and the 10 foot rule, basically what it is, if you're 10 feet away from a guest, it's
Mm.
just you drop what you're doing and you want to pay full attention to the guest and just make eye contact with them. Once
Yeah.
they come within 5 feet, then it's smile and you give them the appropriate greeting of the day. Like, no phony lines. We don't tell them what to say, but in their own
Yeah.
genuine way, we want them, this guest, to feel welcomed, right? And it's such an easy thing, but how many times do you walk into one of the top coffee shops, and it's like they barely even look at you. Okay, what's your
Right.
order? Like, they won't even look in your eyes. They won't even smile. They're too focused on other things, right?
Right.
So at Pure Green, we want it to be a different experience, and it really does start with executing the basics. And so
Mm.
this whole thing with lightning strikes, so lightning strikes is, we look for people doing the right things and not the wrong things. Like, you go to any other organization and team members are just getting reprimanded for doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But we train our franchise partners to look for people doing the right thing, doing acts of legendary experience. And so this whole thing with lightning strikes is, when I walk into any of our stores and I see someone doing something amazing, someone going above and beyond for a guest, I
Yeah.
believe in just immediate feedback. I'll just, boom, lightning strikes. Hey,
Mm.
here's $50. Here's $20, and just give them cash on the spot, because it just reinforces that Pavlovian response. Like, they'll continue to do that good behavior. So you want to
Yeah.
look for things that people are doing right. And
Mm.
then with our franchise partners, it's on a higher level. There's contests where our franchise partners get big cash amounts for doing the right things. And we're doing really cool stuff every month for them.
That's incredible. I love what you guys are doing there. And I think just for corporate America, before, what the expectations before the job compared to once you're like 2 weeks in, 2 months in, 6 months in, a year in, I feel like the expectations always slowly kind of decrease. And, like I said, you just feel like you're walking on eggshells. You don't really know what to do. You feel like you can't necessarily be yourself. At least that's how I felt when I was in corporate America. I didn't feel like I could, voice my opinion. I didn't feel like, especially working remotely, you feel like someone's always over your shoulder, even on the weekends, and in reality, it's not even your business as well. So I think it's really powerful where you're creating this rewarding culture where, people actually want to work there. I want to get $50 for, smiling. I could do that a couple times. But I think I wouldn't be doing my role on the podcast, kind of diving into, the 20/80 rule kind of sparks kind of your why almost, where, 80% of results come from, or you could say it a lot better than me, Ross, but basically with the Pareto rule, it's really all about kind of like the time that you have, and managing your time and expectations. And we all have the same 24 hours, 7 days, 307 days a week, 365 days, but you were clearly able to manage your time a lot better than most people. Do you have like what's like goes into like setting like goals, or how do you like make things actionable? You had your why statement, but what was like actionable for like someone that they want to be a business owner, but how do they actionable like set goals and start to take those steps in the right direction?
So I think it's very simple, and I
Mm.
think a lot of people tend to overcomplicate. And so what I believe is that it all starts when you plan your day.
Mm.
A lot of people get sucked into the email game, and they're just
Yeah.
responding to emails all day, and they're working on other people's agenda. The
Mm.
most important thing is to plan your day, to plan your actions based on your top priorities.
Mm.
So if your top priorities are to, let's say, if you're an executive for a company to maximize revenue, increase profitability, hire the best and the brightest, if those are your three top priorities, all your actions, you should be spending the most amount of time that day focused on those top priorities, right? So the way that the Pareto principle would apply to that is 80% of your day you should be spending on those top three priorities, and then the 20% you could do all the other stuff. And that 80-20 can work in a lot of different ways. It's really designed that 20% of the actions that you do are going to account for 80% of your results. So you want to identify exactly what that 20% of actions are and just focus on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So really just breaking that down. So someone, if they actually, someone is actually serious about taking those next steps in their career, their future, they should really get a sheet of paper, write down what they do in a day and say, where are like my greatest results coming from, and really just focus in on those top three things you're saying.
So I'm saying, like, everyone, like, a lot of people like have like a to-do list, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of random, where they'll put down like 20 things, 30 things on a sheet of paper that maybe they have to do today, right?
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what you want to do is you want to identify all those actions, all those tasks that are really achieving those will focus on achieving your top priorities. So if one of your priorities is increasing revenue, and you want to be more specific than that, right? But that's a whole nother subject. But so if your goal is to, let's just say, this year you want to make $1 million, right? If you look at the tasks, and a lot of the tasks like don't have to do with making that $1 million, then they become less valuable. So you want to bump those to the bottom of the list. What items on the list, tasks where if you do, you're working toward that $1 million that year. That's what you should be doing. That's how you should organize your day. If it doesn't relate to your top priorities, it's not important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good lesson, and something I think I'm guilty of as well, where every day I have like my to-do list, but I think I could better organize that in terms of making sure everything is more aligned with the why statement rather than what's next on the bucket list of, what does someone need for X, Y, Z, but making sure that everything does always go back to the why statement. I really like that, Ross, and something I'm definitely going to take into my life as well. So as we really do wrap up the hour, this has been a lot of fun. I've learned a ton picking your brain apart, so I'm very grateful of your time. I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job, given your health, wellness, literally top 5 fitness entrepreneur. For someone out there that wants to change their life a little bit, in terms of like brain and like the cognitive function, is there like, what can someone do to like start increasing like their brain abilities and, just their thinking patterns and really just their overall mindset? What advice would you have to someone?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I can get very specific, right? And
Yeah, we can only get so specific in the last couple of minutes, but we'll have to have another
exactly.
episode with you diving into everything. This is awesome.
Yes. But to keep it more general, it's like, focus on like your nutrition, right? Because if everyone always breaks for lunch, right? And then after lunch, they want to go to sleep and they lose a lot of productivity. So, focus on like what you eat and eat foods that are healthy. Avoid, like, best general advice, like, avoid the processed foods, go for the superfoods, and go for the foods that give you energy so that you're more energetic throughout the day. That's at a very basic level. But sometimes it's not kind of what you do, it's what you shouldn't do. So it's certain foods to avoid.
Yeah, no, that's super powerful. I'm going to start bringing some more superfoods into my life. Ross, you've definitely convinced me. And, for anyone out there, if you haven't ordered the Founder Success Formula, definitely go order this. If you're not even an entrepreneur or not interested in business, it just allows you to better organize your life. I think a lot of things that you said today, Ross, don't even apply to business ownership, but really just life in general and really organizing your life. And someone that's been very clear in his why statement from an early age too. So I think for anyone out there, it's really powerful. Step one is always figure out what that why is so that you can align those actions in the first place. Otherwise, you're kind of just reacting to everything in life, as Ross kind of alludes to in his book, rather than proactively going about life in the motion. So that really ties into the Conquer the Mind podcast, where, I think in terms of being successful, conquering the mind, conquering life, you really have to live life consciously rather than subconsciously letting life just pass you by and, wait for opportunities to potentially be handed to you, rather than proactively shaking hands, putting yourself with other successful people. And Ross has done such a great job of that. And I can't believe I was able to have such a legendary person on the podcast. So Ross, I greatly appreciate your time, and I'm excited to continue the work together. And if anyone is interested in potentially being a franchise owner with Pure Green, definitely shoot us a message and we'll be happy to give you the information. Like I said, order the Founder Success Formula. Ross also has a podcast you can find online, all things franchising, mindset, success. If you enjoyed the podcast, like, share, comment, help out the algorithm. I appreciate your time today, Ross.
Thanks so much for having me on.